Hi, everyone. Hi, guys. Hi, gals. Thanks for being here. And very happy to report today that we are going to be discussing a swift new battleship, USS Iowa BB4, with Nick Erickson from the Grout Museum District, which is part of a district of museums in Waterloo, Iowa. And so I'd like to welcome Nick. How are you tonight?
Doing well. How are you, Shay?
Good. I'm good. Can everyone hear us? I think sometimes they'll say, "Oh, we can't hear you," or "Hear you good." Great. So Nick and I, we go back now probably near almost 2 years. Stephen and I visited the Sullivan Brothers Iowa Veterans Museum, which is specifically where Nick works. And he showed us around the archives. We've posted some video. Yes. So if anyone's been in my office and they say, "Oh, wow, it's a little cluttered in here," this is how it rolls with us in these jobs here. We hear you 5x5. Thanks, Hoist. Thank you.
I have a question for Hoist.
Go ahead.
Okay, so somebody, an airline pilot who I guess lives around the Buffalo area, sent us a flag to fly over the museum. Sent it back. Is that you?
That was Hoist. Yes, that was Hoist.
Okay. Hello.
He's actually not based in Buffalo, but he's a good guy. So yes, he's a commercial airliner. So he's in a lot of different cities, and he really makes a lot of connections between the fleet. And so, yes, that was him. And he was, because I think I was talking one day like, "Oh, I got to get an Iowa flag again for the Sullivan's ship to fly above." And so he took that and ran with it. But yep, he says, "That's me, but I don't live around Buffalo." There it is there. Yeah. Show it.
Well, I heard that whole story secondhand from the curatorial staff. So I'm sure the error is only mine.
It's very big of you. Thank you, Nick. So let's why don't you tell us a little bit about where you work, a little bit about what you do, and then we'll move right into the ship, BB4, the exhibit, and you have a PowerPoint. So just let me know when you're ready to show the PowerPoint. But why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I'm the registrar here at the Grout Museum District in Waterloo, Iowa. So I am, it's a pretty small staff, so I'm really a registrar and collections manager. I do a job very similar to yours, actually. So it's the acquisition and care and registration of artifacts, limited interpretation where it concerns the artifacts. Yeah, that's about it. I've lived in Iowa nearly all my life. Half my family's from Iowa. The other half is from Illinois. I lived in Illinois till I was 9, and I've been here ever since.
Oh, okay.
So you can throw that PowerPoint up whenever you'd like.
Okay. And
on screen
there
right
we go.
Now, it's the Sullivan Brothers Iowa Veterans Museum, which is one part of the Grout Museum District. The district is a campus of museums, if you will, 5 museums. So the Sullivan Brothers Iowa Veterans Museum, the Grout Museum of History and Science, which is a local history museum, science museum, okay, named for the founder, Henry W. Grout. It has nothing to do with adhesion, nothing to do with tile. We disappoint like 1 or 2 people a year, believe it or not, with the name. But we will not be changing it, for it is the name of our founder. Yes. We have a children's science museum and then 2 Victorian homes as well.
Very nice.
And yes, tonight I'm coming to you in the capacity of my role at the Sullivan Brothers Iowa Veterans Museum. We're Excellent. Going to be discussing an exhibit that we're working on right now. Now, before we begin, I would like to state that I am a museum professional gathering artifacts and R&D for an upcoming exhibit. I'm not a naval historian. In fact, in life, I am an expert of nothing. So, I have printed notes that I will be referencing heavily for the next, however long this lasts. And I intend for this to be a discussion between you and myself and our viewers.
Thank you very much. Well, that is a wonderful way of stating what you are looking to state. So I like that. Thank you.
Good. We are in the early planning stages of this exhibit. So first off, let us introduce the Battleship Iowa. There we go. I had the wrong window selected. A lot of that going to be coming out there. All right. So there she is. She was designed and laid down in 1893 and bears sort of the general shape of U.S. Navy ships designed in that year. Heavy French design with that tumble home. You look at the armored cruiser Brooklyn, you'll see the same thing. Do you think this audience needs a quick lesson in like the New Steel Navy, the ABCD ships? I don't think so. You have those videos on your channel that you've already uploaded, right?
Sure. Yeah, I think there's enough knowledge, and we can revisit it if there's a question from the viewers. So,
Of course.
so feel free to jump right in.
Yeah, suffice it to say, Iowa is the nation's first ocean-going steel battleship. That's an important distinction. When she was authorized originally in 1892, she was going to have the hull number of sea-going battleship number 1, but eventually that was changed to just battleship number 4. Puts her in line behind Indiana, Massachusetts, and Oregon, the first 3 coastline battleships of the U.S. Navy. I shouldn't forget Texas, 1886. By this point, Texas had been classified as a second class battleship, and so she didn't get a number, right? But she's still there, and she's going to fight with Iowa alongside Iowa in the Spanish-American War, so we won't forget about her. A coastline battleship was a good way to sell a steel battleship to Congress. Congress and the American people in this period were very, very hesitant about things like standing armies or battleships, which more than any other type of ship, they considered with a vessel for taking the war to a foreign shore and fighting somebody else. Americans were not interested in that. They're going to get very interested in that for the next 10 years following 1898. But for now, isolationism is the letter of the day, right? And so in order to sell Congress on the idea of building an ocean-going battleship, the Navy had to call it a coastline ocean-going battleship, which itself is an oxymoron, but it was sort of the only way to make it work, right? In fact, the Navy's still building commerce raiders in this era, right? So I think it's Columbia and Minneapolis are the last 2 commerce raiders. Very, very fast cruisers. The Navy's going to build in the same decade as this. They're actually patterned to look to sort of look like liners to fool the enemy, and then they're just going to raid commerce, which is what the Navy had done in most foreign wars since its inception. So yeah, actually, yes, yeah. It was built at William Cramp and Sons. Thank you. I'm sorry, I was reading the chat.
Oh yeah, okay, yes, okay. You could read it, just not participate. Thank you very much. Yes,
right, yes.
She was in Cramp. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So yes. So is that just so when you say coastal battleship versus ocean going, will you talk about the differences, or were there none except just the title to get it passed through Congress without much resistance, or was there?
There are several substantive differences that make Iowa an ocean-going battleship. I guess right off the bat, we'll talk about her forecastle. Her forecastle is 1 deck higher than the Indiana's, and that's sort of her defining feature. That's how you can spot Iowa, sort of, in any photograph where the Indiana's also are, right? Iowa's the one with the tall forecastle. Which raises her freeboard up from 12 feet in the case of the Indianas to something closer to like 25 feet, something like that. Yeah. But we will actually talk about that later.
Okay, good.
So she's launched March 28th, 1896. She's sponsored by Mary Laura Drake. That's the governor's daughter. The governor's name, the governor of Iowa's name at this time, Francis Drake, which is an appropriately naval moniker, I think. Commissioned June 16th, 1897. 1897 is going to be important for more than one reason going forward. You'll see we have a direct connection here to that year as well in the museum. Well, in the upcoming exhibit at least. Okay. All right, now get this. Length 360 feet, right? So 16 feet shorter than a Fletcher, right? But nearly twice the beam, over 5 times the displacement. So if you try to get your head around what that cartoon of a vessel looks like, I mean, I know we're looking at a picture of it, but I don't know. When I try to imagine it, it's just, those proportions are crazy.
Yeah. Shorter but fatter and wider. And displacement,
By
sure.
a lot. The draft, 24 feet, powered by 2 vertical triple expansion steam engines and 5 Scotch boilers. Those are fire tube boilers, of course, where the, the hot gases of combustion pass through a tank full of water and boil the water instead of the other way around.
Yeah.
Crew of anywhere between 450 and 650 officers and men, depending on the era and sort of the Marine contingent, right? 25 years service to the Navy until 1923. Her final decommissioning was, of course, in 1919, but she struck from the Naval list on, is it May 27th, 1923, after her use as a target drone. We'll get to that too. That's sad. um, then, when built, she's the nation's finest battleship and a hero of the Spanish American War. So, let's move forward here. We first got interested in exhibiting Battleship Iowa when we have a question. BB4 was a coal burner, absolutely. In fact, she remained a coal burner until she was converted to a target drone in 1919.
So they never converted her after, say, 1914, 1915?
Nope.
Wow.
Nope. She was well past her prime then, and I imagine the Navy didn't see it as important enough. In fact, she spent all of World War I as a guard ship in Chesapeake Bay, keeping U-boats out of the Chesapeake. So she didn't move much during World War I. So they probably figured it wasn't important enough to replace the power plant. Anyway, we got a phone call a few years ago from a family that had a few artifacts from Seaman First Class William Stommel from Albia, Iowa. They told me that he served aboard USS Iowa. Of course, I was thinking naturally BB61, but when they showed up, all of his stuff was from World War I. And then we got pretty excited. So this is him on the far right with his feet and the top of his head cut off, where the image is torn. But they didn't just bring us that. No, they brought us his jumper, trousers, necktie, handkerchief, Dixie cup, 2 Dixie cups actually, gaiters, ditty bag, his dog tag, which is really interesting, right? William Stommel, right? That is his enlistment date of the 18th of August. Is the 5th month August? I got the stage fright and I can't think of months right now. 1918. And then his birthday, the 28th of July, 1897. So the same year that Iowa is commissioned, just 40 days later or something? U.S. Naval Reserve down the side. And it's acid etched. So it looks like they put like wax or something on the steel dog tab and then bathed it in acid to etch the inscription in, which I've actually never seen before. And then on the reverse side of the dog tag is his fingerprint, probably done up in the same way. How about that?
Wow.
Silverware, his swimsuit with its modesty skirt, his drawers, his clothing stencil, used to put his name on all of his clothing, half a pair of mittens, his round hat, or flat hat, which is, look at that. All right, now I will leave it to one of his relatives to explain to you a little more about his life.
Hello, my name is Leroy Neighbor. This is a picture of William Stommel as a young man. This is his uniform from the USS Iowa, BB4, that we donated to the Grout Museum for use as a new display they are planning, and we are very happy to have his uniform put to such great use. Uncle Bill was my great uncle, who lived in Albia, Iowa with his wife Aunt Rose, and they had no children, only a lot of loving family members. For as far back as I can remember, we traveled to Albia for monthly weekend visits. I consider them my third grandparents. On their bedroom wall was a picture of his naval training class, and on occasion he would let me look at his uniform and other items from his time in the Navy that he kept in an old steamer trunk. He was very proud of that service to his country because it was never a problem showing me his uniform when I asked. He was also a proud member of his local American Legion in Alpha. I remember hearing about some of his life's adventures or hardships from my mother, who spent a lot of her summers with him. None of his jobs were easy. Can you imagine working down in one of the many southern Iowa coal mines? Later on, he worked as a Monroe County employee from which he retired. He was a gruff man with a gentle heart and enjoyed growing and caring for the many fruit and vegetables he grew. In their yard were 3 large cherry trees, an apple tree, grapevine, and vegetable garden. He was very proud of his cherry trees, and when ripe, we would go down to help pick and can them. He passed away a few days before my 1969 high school graduation. My aunt had his funeral held back until after I graduated. Thank you for listening, and I hope you will consider supporting this great display Grout Museum is planning.
We are very, very thankful to the family and thankful to Mr. Leroy Neighbor for recording that video for us, or that audio clip, I should say. Now, he mentioned support. Well, here's why we need your support.
Okay, so my name is Nathan Art. I'm the Director and Chief Curator here at the UNI Museum in Cedar Falls. I also serve as an adjunct professor for the Department of History, Teaching, Collections, Care, and Management. So here at the lab today, we're working with the Grout Museum to preserve a collection from the first steel battleship named after Iowa, the USS Iowa, where William Stommel served, and this is his collection that we hope to have on exhibit over there very shortly. And you kind of get an eye for it. This also helps us look for anything, like right there, that could be an insect. Looks like maybe some eating going on that we can inspect as we go. By the time you get done cleaning an entire piece, you know every bit of it, every single scratch, every single weird dye point. So, your hat's cleaned up really well, so I soaked them both. This one has a form. So this one was completely and totally, you can see that white, beautiful white color. Really nice. We learned some interesting stuff about these. The inside of these rims are actually cardboard, like a hardboard.
Get out of town.
Nope, that's why they're brown. So there's actually a boarding material in there that we identified, which is what makes them rigid and makes them. So when we dried them, that's what does this. So we had really good luck pulling a lot of the early colors. We could be more aggressive with it, but I stopped because this board doesn't like being wet. And I don't want to do it too many times. And this, to me, it had a nice patina to it. It was nice and clean. I think it'll last you a long time. Same thing with this one. Except this one we did the flat dry like the Grout asked, so it can be stored flat and can be exhibited that way. These two I'm really happy with how they turned out. So this leaks turned out better. This thing was dirty beyond dirty belief. We did 2 rounds of soaking, and we were able to pull even color. We were able to get rid of a lot of the soot and staining. We were able to maintain almost all of the integrity of the piece. It turned out to be a perfect example. So this one will do the basic drying of it, and you're good to go. But as we dry it, this is blotting paper, and then this whole thing is sucking, and then I have this down, so it's creating this really nice, gentle dryer. And it's slowly drying this so it doesn't shrink or morph or change. And it's been doing this all month. Okay, so my name is.
A lot of work yet to be done. So this the flat hat here, and the university couldn't work on this because it was too complicated. It's got ribbon, wool, it's got a steel stiffener around the brim. The sweatband is leather. It's got a cotton netting on the inside. So we had to send this up to Minneapolis to get work done. Probably should be cycling through these photos while I was saying that. What we wanted was for the folks in Minneapolis to, oh yeah, this is really interesting. So inside the crown of these older style round hats is, it's steel, it's spring steel, right? Can you see my mouse on the screen? Yeah, you can. So it snapped right here. It's poking out.
Oh,
So
yeah.
a lot of serious repairs to be done on this piece. We sent it to the Midwest Art Conservation Center in Minneapolis. to get worked on. And they're looking at the gold embroidery there to see if they can fix it up. Unfortunately, they cannot. So it is less than 1% gold, and then the remainder, the 99 point whatever percent, is some other white metal. So the only way to bring back its luster is to polish it, which is of course out of the question. So we'll have to come up with an interesting way of lighting it so the USS Iowa shows up on the hatband.
So what were some of the beyond the hat? I know that video is so great. Do you want to explain, were there other challenges with the swimsuit, or was it just, doing a little repair, getting rid of some of the soot and the dirt? What were some of the other challenges that you experienced?
Fantastic question. Some pieces had mold that had to be mitigated. Some pieces had severe pitting. We actually will not be able to exhibit the neckerchief. The neckerchief is too far gone. It's natural silk, and it has begun to shatter. So we'll have to substitute a replacement in, which is not hard to get. The pattern basically hasn't changed. So you just purchase a modern one and use that. Nobody will know. Well, everybody will know because I just said. But whatever. So yes, that had stiffened. There were some problems with the gaiters. They both have bronze disease, and the mirror, his shaving mirror, his signal mirror, also has bronze disease. So actually, which is it's like rust. It's rust for bronze, and it breaks down copper alloy material, and it's sort of inexorable. You can slow it down, but you can't reverse it. You can't stop it, essentially, right? I guess in one way, it's good that basically everything in the collection has bronze disease, so it won't be spreading if we put it all in one case. It's all degrading at the same rate. Nothing lasts forever, and a good portion of a registrar's job is simply slowing decay rather than preventing it or reversing it. This is the space that we intend to put this exhibit in. It is a bit of wall, sort of an alcove between our Spanish-American War exhibit and our First World War exhibit. And then the opposite wall as well, but I forgot to take a picture of that. This is our current exhibit to BB61, and we would like to mirror this exhibit for BB4. So we're going to, I guess, probably match Cruiser Olympia for the laminate decking. Determining the color is pretty gosh darn difficult. And then the backdrop, we have this fantastic color lithograph that was printed by, now I'm looking down at my notes again, printed by the Brother Jonathan Publishing Company in Chicago in 1896. We got a very, very, very good scan out of this thing. We took it to the university, to this large bed scanner. Do you see the 5 men up on the forecastle there?
Hold on here, let me do that. See if that helps with anyone. Okay.
Oh, I probably see them now. If
there we go.
So we can make this thing as large as the wall, which is indeed the goal. So that'll serve as our backdrop. The other important detail that we would like to mimic downstairs are we have Iowa's main battery projectiles and powder bags here. We would like to do the same for BB4 downstairs. That has its own challenges, so we'll talk about those next. We'll go through BB4's armament real quick. She had 4 of these 1-pounder Hotchkiss guns. These 2 are up in the fighting tops. There's really no place where they're installed because they're mobile, so you can hitch them to like most of the rails on the ship. You can move them around. In fact, Iowa's entire secondary battery, which is made up of 1-pounders and 6-pounders, can all be loaded into the ship's boats and brought ashore and used as part of the Marine or Naval infantry contingent, which is really interesting. Anyway, and these are Hotchkiss guns. Some of the books you'll read about BB4 suggest that the 1-pounders on Iowa were automatic. They are not. They're semi-automatic. Actually, they're not even semi-automatic. There's a gunner and a loader, right? They're single-shot pieces. Really quick rate of fire, 15 rounds a minute, maybe faster if you're not aiming. So anyway, we were able to get our hands on an original 1-pounder fixed round, inert, of course. We have Mr. Don Postian of Toledo, Iowa, to thank for that. He found those for us. Iowa had fully 20 6-pounder Hotchkiss guns. These are mounted. This one is on Iowa's afterbridge. They were mounted below the bridge. They're mounted on top of the superstructure, on the superstructure deck, and then also inside the Iowa's gun deck, which in Iowa's case you refer to as the main deck. She has her own deck nomenclature. It's old enough that they're not using like 1, 2, 3, 01, 02. No, we'll get to that later as well. She's got 20 of these, and these are swivel guns. So a team of, I forget how many, but truly the gun is pointed and trained and aimed by a dude as though it were a rifle. And he puts that pad against his shoulder, holds the handle there in one of those two positions with his left hand, and fires the gun with his right. And that pad makes it so that the recoil doesn't hit his chest. It places him far enough back that it can recoil straight back at him.
Do you have a zoom in of that picture, or no? Because I was gonna go full screen just for a second.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, I don't know if that will help, but maybe if someone's watching this on TV, it certainly would help. Maybe, yeah. Okay.
Certainly.
So it's swiveled at the mount, right? Like at where it connects to the actual legs of the mount.
At the trunnions, yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
And then also has the ability to be sighted, to be pointed incrementally too. So we'll talk about that when we get to the Spanish-American War real quick.
Great.
Mr. Postian found us an original demilled version of that as well. All right.
Man.
Now we'll talk about Iowa's main battery. This is the pre-dreadnought era, so Iowa's main battery is split 3 ways. The smallest, we'll start smallest and go to largest. She's got 6 4-inch 40s. These are, again, breech loading rifles, as everything is on Iowa in this period, of course. She's got 6 of those. This is on the port afterbridge. So there's another one on the starboard side. And then she's got the remaining 4 are on the main deck, port and aft. They're port and starboard.
Very nice. So what you're saying is it's loaded from the back of the barrel.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, breech loader.
Yeah, breech loaded. Okay, thank you.
And again, similar rate of fire to all of the, all of these, what they called rapid fire guns. So in this period, the Navy was calling anything that fired a fixed round a rapid fire gun. And they all had a rate of fire of about 15 shots a minute, 15 rounds a minute, right? And in fact, that's consistent with the Army as well. So the French 75 in World War I is going to have a similar rate of fire. Where was I? What was I thinking of? Oh, well. Oh, this is how you keep up the rate of fire on a 4-incher. You line up a bunch of guys so that one guy doesn't get tired hefting rounds all day, and you just slam them in the breech, one after another. Now, we couldn't find any original examples of these, so Mr. Postian stepped up, and we'll let him talk.
Hi, I'm here today to show you a little project that I'm working on for the Grout Museum District in Waterloo, Iowa. And basically, they've got a program going. They have a display on the USS Iowa, BB61, which is an Iowa-class battleship. And they want to do a display on the original USS Iowa, BB4, which was in service during the Spanish-American War, which would have been in 1898. And they wanted to get some projectiles and shell casings of the size that was fired from that ship. And being 125 years old, they're either not available, or if you do find them, they're going to be too costly to buy.
So we're going to try to make some out of wood. We obtained the original dimensions and specs for the shells. And what I'm doing here today, I've got a blank piece of wood on the lathe, and I'm going to be turning a 4-inch projectile that will match up to what was fired from the USS Iowa during the Spanish-American War. I'm making this out of basswood, or linden, as its technical name is. It's a pretty stable wood. It's kind of like white pine. And once I get it turned to the proper sizes and whatnot, sand it down, and we'll make a shell casing to go underneath, and we'll attach the two together, and then it'll be painted in the correct colors that it would have been when it was on the ship. If this turns out successful, we're going to do an 8-inch and a 12-inch, which were also fired from the ship. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to speed this up a little bit and kind of show you how this works when we go to fitting on it. It's a little noisy, but this is kind of the way it works. Just turning down the front end to make a point for the bullet and the projectile of the gun. That kind of gives you an idea of how it works and how it flows. And like I said, we're in the process of doing this. Hopefully it'll turn out successful and look nice.
And there's the finished product, with which we are well pleased.
Oh, I like that.
Best
I-
approximation of
That's a fabulous shot. So I'd love to hear how you fostered and built these relationships with these individuals that have helped you, like the Minnesota Conservation, this gentleman here. So did you take an active role in finding individuals to help you with this exhibit, or was it the power of the Grout Museum District, or how did that work?
Oh no, you've got to do the legwork. You and I, the conservation lab at the University of Northern Iowa is helping us out because we have a long established relationship of hosting their interns, and we've been working with them for 40 years. The Midwest Art Conservation Center is helping us out because we're paying them to do it. But we've used them for decades as well.
Okay.
And then Mr. Postian, his father was on the cruiser Honolulu in the Second World War. And so he himself is a sort of a local naval authority. He does talks on the cruiser. And his father joined the cruiser, I think. I don't want to get this wrong. I don't know if he was at Tassafaronga. I should know. I've spoken to him a bunch about it. But anyway, that's his shtick. And he helped us out because he's interested in what we do here. And for that, we thank him. And it's a good question. The next person I have to thank is Captain John Spangler, U.S. Navy retired, for helping us track down the original technical drawings of all of these projectiles. We found Mr. Spangler because Mr. Postian pointed us in his direction. That's how this works. It's all connections and it's all networking, and truly, no, it is not simply the power of the museum. It doesn't quite work like that. I think you're aware of this as well.
Yeah, but I didn't know if it was you directly reaching out to them.
Gotcha. It's me and others on staff. That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great shot. So is that weight accurate?
As accurate as we could possibly make it.
Yeah.
We had to make a few compromises in degrees of millimeters here or there, because there's only so much you can do on a wood lathe. If it was metal, we could have made you a 1-to-1, but this is as best as we could possibly do.
Very good.
Next, we have Iowa's 8-inch guns. She had 8 of these in 4 waist turrets, 2 on each beam. This is a picture of her aftermost starboard 8-inch turret. And so that is a I should say the the 4-inch guns fire a 33-pound projectile with a 14-pound powder charge. Effective range 11,000 yards ish.
Hmm.
The 8-inch guns fire a 260-pound projectile with a 44-pound charge. Effective range on land is 16,000 yards, but these guns can only elevate to 14 degrees, so that brings it down to maybe 10,000 yards, something like that. Now you'll notice the muzzle is blown off of one of these. When the Navy was purchasing their 8-inch guns, the whole point of the new steel Navy is to do it with domestic manufacture and U.S. steel, right? Indeed, we have the modern U.S. steel industry has the Navy to thank, right? For the new steel Navy simply dragged American industry into the modern age. So the Navy was very interested in buying these 8-inch gun tubes from American factories. Well, when they were done, the 8-inch guns had a bunch of sand splits in them. Those are tiny cracks in the steel. The Navy went ahead and purchased them anyway at a reduced price and installed them in Iowa. In a single gunnery exercise in, let's see, 19... Huh, I didn't make that note. Let's say 1903. Iowa blew the muzzles off three of her 8-inchers.
Wow.
In fact, in later photographs of Iowa, you'll see that they've installed these steel mantlets right in front of the gun ports, presumably to protect the gun crews when the rest inevitably burst. They didn't, but those are still there. I'll try and point them out if I can remember.
Wow.
So, here's that guy. That's our 8-incher. Now that is an APC round, or our best attempted an APC round. We had to do it with the angle, the radius of the curve of the shell is mostly right. But I mean, I really shouldn't be criticizing it like this. It is fantastic work. We've decided to make it an APC round that is armor piercing capped. That's a Johnson cap on the end of it, developed from the Russians. I think they called it a Makarov cap, maybe. But it's just a mild steel cap on the front of the hardened steel projectile that absorbs the kinetic force of the projectile ramming into the enemy's armor, so that the hard and brittle penetrator doesn't break apart when it hits the armor, right? So then it actually passes through that mild steel cap, and then presumably, hopefully as well, through the steel of the enemy vessel's side. Now those probably weren't, Iowa didn't have capped APC rounds at the time of the Spanish-American War. These showed up in the Navy in, I think, 1898, so Iowa got them later. We thought it was so interesting that we would very much, we'd like them to be represented in the exhibit. I mean, Iowa's got 20 years of service after the Spanish-American War that's just as legitimate as during the Spanish-American War. That's just sort of her hero period is all. So it's what everybody thinks of first. And then finally, the 12-inch 35s. Oh, those 8-inch guns are also 35 caliber. I think I failed to mention that before. 12-inch 35s, 4 of them in 2 turrets, one fore, one aft. Check out on the 8-inch turret. There's those protective mantlets that they've installed here. So this picture was probably taken in maybe around 1905 or something. Let's see. Now, Mr. Postian has yet to finish our 12-inch round. So here's a picture of a bunch of 12-inch rounds on Texas deck and around. I forget the year this was taken, but this is on Texas, 1886. And if you look at that row closest to the camera, the one at the far left is an APC round, like we'd like recreated. Okay, we need to talk about the torpedoes. So Iowa had 4 torpedo tubes, 4 14-inch Howell torpedo tubes. She was originally supposed to have 6, so 1 more at the bow and another at the stern. But those they didn't even finish constructing those. Those were canceled while she was still at Cramps. So she launches with 4. So you can see the torpedo hatches, basically fore and aft of the midways turrets there, the 8-inch turrets. The hatches are opened first, and then the torpedoes launched out. Obviously, that's how it is. But my point is, you crank the hatches open by hand, and then you can launch the torpedo. The Howell torpedo is super interesting. This was the first American-designed self-propelled torpedo. It had no engine, no batteries, no fuel, nothing like that. It was powered simply with stored kinetic energy in a flywheel, a 132-pound flywheel that you can see there, arrayed in line with the long axis of the torpedo, perpendicular to the sides. So it spun forward like this. It also had a gyroscopic effect. So each torpedo tube has a small steam engine hooked up to it. The steam engine speeds it spins up the flywheel to something like 10,000 RPMs, and then you disconnect the steam engine from the torpedo tube, and then launch the torpedo, I think with compressed air. I'm not sure yet. I haven't been able to figure that out. Iowa was the only American battleship so outfitted. All the other ones had whiteheads, 18-inch whiteheads. So the Howell torpedo was wakeless, and it followed a completely straight track, which the whitehead had problems with. It would always torque, right? But that gigantic flywheel had a gyroscopic effect that kept the torpedo pointed straight. And it's actually got 2 propellers, 2 counter-rotating propellers at the back. It looks like some Russian nuclear submarine. And so it was very straight. In its day, and I do mean like 1888, it was competitive with the Whitehead, but the Whitehead very, very quickly outpaced it in both like tracking and endurance. And eventually, when the gyroscope is added to torpedoes, you can't use the Howell anymore because the Howell only goes straight. So the programmable gyroscope torpedo, I suppose. But
So we're
go on.
Continue. I'm sorry.
It had a bigger punch. It had a larger warhead than Whitehead, actually, for years. So, but go on.
Were there any that you know of or that you've researched, any accidents with any of the main batteries or torpedoes, while the ship was in service? I know you talked about the 8-inch with the barrel breaking. Were there other incidents with the 12-inch or with the torpedoes?
Yes, sir. One of Iowa's 12-inch guns burst in, I think, 1903, killing 3 men. In fact, when we get to we're going to look at the turrets and how they work after a little bit here. I'll try to talk faster because I'm running out of time. But when we get to that, I actually have a list of turret accidents that occurred between 1900 and 1910. It's a positively ghastly list. As far as I know, there were no serious accidents with the torpedoes that caused injury to the crew. However, off San Diego in 1899, Iowa lost Howell torpedo number 22. So it had a dummy warhead installed. So when the torpedo finishes its track, the warhead floats, and then you can recover the torpedo with one of the boats. Somehow the warhead became detached, and they lost the torpedo. Then, in 2012, a Navy Dolphin, believe it or not, I didn't know they had these, but an actual trained Dolphin that's trained in the recovery of the identification of unexploded ordnance. Not the recovery, that'd be crazy. I don't know how. But anyway, a Dolphin found it. A couple of Dolphins found it before they actually decided to follow up and see what was down there. And it's Howell torpedo number 24. That's actually from USS Iowa, lost by USS Iowa in 1899. So they raised it, they sent it to the Naval History and Heritage Command. This is just a screenshot from their website. And they've spent the intervening years restoring it. And there it is. That is a torpedo from BB4. And this is super cool. Check this out. That's the flywheel. So we're looking straight on. The warhead would have attached to the front right here. And we're looking straight back into the torpedo. and that's the 132-pound flywheel exposed right there. I think it took
Holy
like 5
moly.
years for them to conserve or something. And they've got all kinds of fantastic pictures on their website that I do believe we'll be using in the exhibit, for goodness sake.
Hmm. Now, have you reached out to NHHC or made any connections with them? You and I had spoken earlier, and I was going to see if I could build that connection. So hopefully that can come to fruition, and you can speak to them about this particular torpedo number 24. Amazing.
I'd love to speak with them about it. Maybe get somebody to. I don't know if they do talks on it or anything, but it would be a fantastic program, wouldn't it? Kind of like how you did with the Juno wreck analysis. That'd really
Yes.
be something. I haven't tried to contact them yet. I don't even really have a good proposal, at least not regarding the torpedo. I mean,
Okay.
I'm not for a second going to think that we could have like a competitive proposal put together for them to like say loan us the torpedo. That
Right.
seems like a bit much. But I don't
Go
know.
for the gusto.
Yeah, right. So real quick, we're not done, but we know how YouTube videos work, and sometimes people want to tune out. Maybe you want to tune out right about now. If you do, look at this slide real quick. That's my contact information. Give me comments and questions. Send them to my email address. I always want to chat. I always want to learn more. Please avail yourself of that. Also, if you want to donate to the museum, specifically to this exhibit, follow that URL there. That leads right to our main page. And it's the banner of the main page is this exhibit. You can't possibly miss it. And that's the phone number. Okay, moving on. I'm going to try my best to pick up the pace here. I sure would hate to run out of time. But let's look at the Indiana.
No, I think we're doing pretty well here.
I think so, right?
Oh, so I totally see what you mean about the forecastle.
Right? Yes.
Oh my God, it's dramatic.
Yes, that's right. So the Indiana class had a lot of faults. It's a freshman effort. That's fine. The Iowa class is, we call it the Iowa class. There's only one, USS Iowa. But regardless, a lot of the books I have refer to it as the Iowa class anyhow. It's a direct improvement of the Indiana class. And in fact, it gets designed while Indiana is still being built. Indiana's 75% completed at the yard when they start going back to fixing all of Indiana's sort of problems and eventually come up with the Iowa class. Maybe not Indiana herself, maybe Oregon or Massachusetts. Because Iowa wasn't approved of until 1892. So, something else to look up.
Mm-hmm.
So Indiana's commissioned in 1895. She's shorter than Iowa, 348 feet. Beam of 69, marginally shorter than Iowa. Draft 24 feet, so the same draft. Remember that. Displacement 10,288 tons, so 1,500 less than Iowa. Same power plant. Crazily enough, same crew complement, even though she has 25% less space for crew. This will result in sort of like weird problems in command because she only has 9 officers of the line. There's only accommodations for 9 officers of the line. So you think about how many guns are on battleships. Individual gun crews there are, plus the torpedoes, plus the engineering spaces, plus all of these ship systems. You only have 9 officers of the line to be split among all of these. I mean, how many gun crews does Iowa have? I've never actually added that up. It's close to 50 individual gun crews. All need instruction and direction in time of battle, right? So it's only got 9 of these. At one point during the bombardment of, I think, San Juan, Puerto Rico in the Spanish-American War, one of these guys he's actually in the conning tower. He's operating a statometer. He's taking range measurements. He gets excited, fumbles his revolver. It drops to the deck, discharges. He shoots himself in the leg. Now you only have 8 officers of the line, right? So Iowa has a greater complement of both men and officers. Except the Ullman books don't actually tell me how many more line officers Iowa has. I think the answer is 4, but I'm not sure.
Well, they probably relied then heavily on CPOs, chief petty officers. To be the gun, near like the gun captains of all of the mounts and stuff. Yeah, they would have had to have relied on, the senior enlisted guys.
Absolutely, yes. So her secondary battery is comprised of 6 1-pounders, so 2 more than Iowa, 26 pounders, same as Iowa. Her main battery is split between 4 6-inch 40s, which are bag guns. So she doesn't have no part of her main battery is rapid firing like it is with Iowa. 8 8-inch 35s and 4 13-inch 35s. So the same number of 8-inch guns and 13 inchers instead of 12 inchers was actually a huge difference. Indiana and the Indiana class, are tiny battleships, tiny, right? 348 feet long, but their weight of broadside will not be equaled for another 10 years after 1895, right? They're 15 years. I forget which ship does it, but it's around 1910 that like you've got anything like Indiana's throwing out with a single broadside. It's crazy.
So not even the HMS Dreadnought.
Sorry, in the U.S. Navy.
Oh, maybe you said that and I didn't hear it. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
I don't know what I said. So she's got 4 18-inch Whitehead tubes for protection. Let's see. Okay.
So I'll zoom in on that screen. Okay.
So her belt is, where'd my cursor go? All right here. 18 inches of nickel steel alloy, which is a crazy thick belt. These pre-dreadnought battleships had just unbelievably thick belts, and that's because it's a lower grade of steel. The turret barbettes, the main turret barbettes, actually form the ends of the citadel. Her casemate armor here is 5 inches. Actually, everywhere else she's got the same thickness of armor as Iowa, except Iowa uses Harveyized nickel steel, which is stronger, and we'll talk about that a little. Harvey steel is just a nickel steel that's been subjected to a weeks-long heating and quenching process that makes its surface harder than simple nickel steel alloy. Let's see. So here's Iowa, right? You can see how Iowa is just an improved Indiana. Nothing to it. And it's amazing that she's got a greater displacement. She has a slightly bigger crew, better armor, mostly. She's got that tall forecastle, but she's still got the same draft. It's very interesting, and she's faster. Indiana's 15 knots. Oregon and Massachusetts are 16 knots. Iowa, at her sea trials, manages 17.8. And it's all to do with she has a longer ship, she has better seakeeping capabilities, because her power plant's the same.
Yeah.
Iowa is considered, in this era, a very good balance of protection, armament, crew comfort, crew accommodation, and seakeeping. Her 12-inch guns, again, are a compromise in weight. And naval planners at the time figure 12 inches can beat any opposing armor that a 13-inch gun can, so we're going to give her 12s. They're also thinking about, she's an ocean-going battleship, so she's going to be further from her bases of supply. 13-inch guns can get resupplied really easily. If you make the guns 12, you can carry more rounds. You can go to the other side of the world and not worry about resupply as much. They also improved the turrets greatly. Indiana class's turrets are not balanced. So in order to give the guns any kind of elevation, you've got to set them really far forward in the turret. Because if you set them back, then you have to make the gun port taller so that the gun can elevate, which puts the Indiana's 13-inch turret's center of gravity ahead of their pivot point. So if you turn all the guns to port, Indiana lists to port. Her belt on the port side submerges, and on the right, on the starboard side, actually comes out of the water. When you fill Indiana with coal entirely, when you give her a full load of coal, the belt submerges, and now your armor at the waterline is no longer your 18-inch belt, but it's your 5-inch casemate armor that is above the belt. So Iowa's just a refinement of this whole thing. Iowa also and Indiana also have another feature that I'm going to quick boop. So on Iowa, and I forgot to mention, Iowa's belt, instead of being capped off at either end by the barbettes forming the ends of the citadel, like on Indiana, Iowa's belt actually wraps around the two barbettes. So there's a lot of armor here and here, protecting the ammunition handling rooms. These little boxes I've drawn in red here are Iowa's cellulose cofferdams. So Iowa's got these hollow spaces in line with the belt, and actually it's also one deck higher. I forgot to draw that. So imagine that this red box is also up here, right? So those are negative spaces packed full of palm fiber. The theory is that since we can't extend the belt stem to stern without making the ship too heavy, we'll fill it with wood fiber so that if it gets penetrated by a projectile, the wood fiber will soak up all the seawater, and it's sort of a self-sealing feature. This does not work. At the Battle of Santiago de Cuba, the Spanish cruiser Cristobal Colon puts a shot right through Iowa's forward starboard cofferdam, and instead of soaking up all the seawater and self-sealing, the palm fiber, this compressed cellulose, just runs out, leaving a brown streak in Iowa's wake. And then I think in 1905 or 1906, when they open up the rest of the cofferdams to just see what's going on in there, all ships leak, steel ships leak. They find a horrid sludge of decomposed palm fiber. So ultimately, the Navy abandons that strategy.
Interesting.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? My favorite captain of USS Iowa, Rob Lee Evans, Fighting Bob, who commanded Iowa during the Spanish-American War, wrote a fantastic paragraph in the Annals of Iowa, which is the official publication of the State Historical of Iowa in 1901. I'm going to read you a paragraph about Iowa's protection here. This is written by Captain Rob Lee Dunklison Evans. The hull is protected over a greater portion of its surface by 14 inches of Harveyized nickel steel armor, and the ends, where not so protected, have a cofferdam filled with compressed cellulose. The main part of the ship amidships, which contains the machinery and guns, may be called a steel box or citadel, formed by the 14-inch steel armor on the sides and the 12-inch thickness of armor, which at the ends connect the two sides of the box. She carries 17 boats, 2 of them being steam pickets or launches, and in all has 86 engines, 152 steam cylinders. She has 24,000 candle power searchlights and 500 electric lights. She is ventilated by fans driven by electric motors, and all her ammunition hoists, coal whips, etc. are worked by the same means. She has an ice machine which can make 1 ton of ice per day, and at the same time keep her cold storage rooms at a temperature near zero, and cool all the water her crew of 600 men and officers can drink.
Nice.
All right. So deck nomenclature.
Oh, good. Yeah, we're getting inside.
All right. And we'll look at the armor as well. Okay, so this is a cross-section, starboard cross-section at frame 44, which puts us halfway through the forward starboard 8-inch wing turret. Oh, something else I forgot to mention. They in the Iowa design, they simply move the 8-inch turrets closer to amidships to prevent the guns interfering with each other, like the blast, the concussion, the smoke. Everybody's using, everybody's using brown powder in this era, which is a sort of a slow burning propellant that creates an awful lot of smoke. So that's a concern. Anyway, 14 inches at the belt, moving up above that on the side is 5 inches of what they call casemate armor. The top of the citadel there is 2.75 inches thick. The 8-inch turret barbettes is 8 inches thick, outboard 6 inches thick, inboard. The turret itself is 8 inches. Doesn't look like it in the drawing, but it is. Top of the turret is 2 inches, and the cupola at the top, which is in the wrong spot in this drawing, is 5 inches thick. Now notice there's a gap between the top of the casemate armor and the bottom of the 8-inch turret barbette, right? So that part of the ship is completely unarmored. There are a lot of theories about how to armor a ship in this period. As you can tell, they're years away from Nevada, the all or nothing scheme, right? This is like all or some or nothing. And believe it or not, the nothing was strategically placed. There were a couple of camps, a couple of schools of thought in this. One school of thought was scared that if she takes a shell underneath her 8-inch turret, that maybe it would collapse into the ship. I don't know about that, because it's the frame that holds up the turret and not the skin. So I don't know. But another school of thought is thinking, all right, look at my mouse here. I can't believe this, but okay, so another school of thought is thinking is like, okay, if we armor the entire side of the ship and an AP round comes in and penetrates at a low angle. Actually, let's pretend it's coming in from this side over here to port. If it penetrates the armor, glances off the top of the citadel, and then goes to leave the ship, if we armor this section, it's going to take a huge chunk of side out with it, like a gunshot wound, like an exit wound from a gunshot, right? So they're like, well, maybe we'll just leave a little bit unarmored. I don't know. That sounds crazy. But again, remember, they're inventing this stuff on the fly. Okay, it's 1893. It's 1892 when they're designing this. So they don't know. There hasn't actually been an engagement between steel battleships yet anywhere. So they've got nothing to go on. It's all just guesswork. So the deck nomenclature, starting at the bottom, is the hold, then the platform deck. I put that in red because it's not actually in this picture, so we'll see it later. The ammunition handling rooms between the magazines for the 12-inch turrets are all on the platform deck. Then the protective deck, then the berth deck. The main deck is the level of the quarter deck. The upper deck is the level of the forecastle. All of Iowa's casemate guns are on the main deck. Then the superstructure deck is self-explanatory. That's your O1 level, essentially. And then actually above that is the bridge level. And then Iowa had another deck on the bridge on top of the chart house that goes unnamed. And then the after bridge is between the upper deck and the superstructure deck in terms of height, but it's still just referred to, I think, as the superstructure deck. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. It's between the superstructure deck and the bridge deck in terms of height, but I think it's just referred to as the bridge deck, or they just call it the after bridge. I don't really know. This is difficult. This is complicated stuff. This is the weeds. All right, I'm going to talk about the turret now. So look at everything that I've outlined in red. Those are the turret spaces, all the way down to the handling rooms. And then while we're at it, just have a look over here. Here's the conning tower. The conning tower is 10 inches of armor, and then the ship's telegraph going down to the engineering spaces is protected by 7 inches of armor. I actually do need to look up. Okay, Iowa's turrets are 17 inches thick. The barbettes are 10 inches. That's actually reversed in the Indiana class. Indianas have perfectly circular turrets. Iowas have elliptical turrets. So you see it overhangs the barbette at the back. That's the first U.S. battleship to do that, to do turrets like that. And that balances Iowa's guns. So you can turn Iowa's guns in any direction, and the center of gravity will not be thrown off. Now, let's talk about these turrets. These turrets are crazy dangerous, Shane. This is the most dangerous thing about Iowa.
Okay.
The turret itself is one open compartment without a dividing bulkhead. So if something happens to one gun, it happens to everyone in the turret. The hoist leading from the handling room down here all the way up is open. In fact, this whole area is open. There are no flame-proof shutters here, nothing here. Nothing but an ammunition car and just an open shaft all the way to the top. The hoist itself on the 12-inch turret is not armored because it's inside the barbette. Oh, we need to go back and talk about something real quick. All right. Look at the 8-inch hoist here is protected by 3 inches of armor, but no side armor at all. People at the time were like worried about this, right? In fact, Rob Lee Evans writes in his memoir that as they were traveling to their station off Santiago in the Spanish-American War, he had the crew spend a week winding anchor chain around all of the hoists to try to provide some level of protection, because they're very, very nervous about this part of the ship right here specifically. What's going to happen if we take a round right there?
Right.
Anyway.
So is this the hoist is like an elevator? Is it kind of?
Yeah. Check it out. So at the bottom here, you see these 3 rectangles on top of each other, right?
Yeah.
That's the ammo car. So it's 3 tubes, each one set on top of the other. The bottom tube, the handlers place the projectile in the bottom tube, and then 2 powder bags go in these tubes. Then the hoist travels up all the way to the top. Here's a hydraulic rammer here that rams the projectile home. The car drops down 1 level, rams in a powder bag, drops down another level, rams in the second powder bag. The turret can only load at 3 degrees of elevation. So no matter where you're shooting, you have to return to 3 degrees in order to load each time. What else is wrong with the turret? This is a single stage, right? Most battleships later, right, after all of these horrible accidents that are going to happen between 1900 and 1910, are going to break this up. So this is going to be the hoist all the way up is going to be a tube. There's going to be flame-proof shutters at the top, at the second stage right here. There's a deck here with more people working to transfer to a second hoist that's going to go up to the top in later years. Not here. And then flame-proof shutters at the bottom of the tube here, right? Hoist has just commented that it's a death trap. It is an actual provable death trap. This is the worst part of any pre-dreadnought ship. So okay. Inside one turret, and again, there's no bulkhead dividing both gun breeches. So inside a single 12-inch turret, there are 18 men working in this space here alone.
Oh my God.
That's 2 trainers, 4 pointers, 2 hoistmen, 2 trippers, 4 loaders, 2 rammers, and 2 plugmen. If you want to know what those all are, read John Barry's 1908 Cosmopolitan magazine article in the 12-inch turret. It's fantastic. It's a really good article and explains what each of those men do. I cannot talk about that right now. We've got to move on. But here's a list of turret accidents that happened before they ultimately got around to installing all of these safety features that are standard in battleships all the way up to the projected Montana class, right? So January of 1903, Massachusetts, BB4, suffers a turret explosion that kills 9. One of Iowa's 12-inch guns burst in 1903, killing 3, which is actually not really a turret problem. That's a gun problem, but still. Now this is the worst one. In April of 1904, USS Missouri, BB11, one of her main guns flashed back into the turret and ultimately incinerated or asphyxiated all 36 men who worked in this space here. In 1906, USS Kentucky BB6 suffered a turret explosion that killed 8 men. A bag of powder being removed, so a charge being removed from a gun that they decided not to fire, accidentally made contact with the electrical igniters, right, the electric primers, and detonated. I don't understand, frankly, how it only killed 8 men. I don't understand how a flashback can kill everybody in the entire turret all the way down to the handling room, but an actual charge exploding, I don't know. And then in 1906, USS Georgia BB-15 suffered a turret explosion with 10 fatalities. So the turrets were by far the largest weakness of battleships in this time. And eventually it does get corrected. They divide the turrets, right? We have shutters, safety precautions. In this era right here, they also don't have the blowers, right? That'll
Right.
like when you see a battleship gun fire, and then for the next few seconds, a bunch of smoke comes out the front. Those are blower fans that are blowing this out. They don't have these. And probably a blower system like that, well, undoubtedly, a blower system like that would have prevented Missouri's gun from flashing back when they opened the breach, because all of that would have been extinguished and out the muzzle. Any questions about that before we move on?
No, I think the comments are people really didn't seem to have any idea that they could have been this dangerous or this open. You know, there's a nice comment here.
Yes, absolutely, yes. Oh my gosh, let's talk about Sims. All of these corrections are thanks to, actually at this time, Lieutenant Sims, William Sims. He was a firebrand. He wrote all of these polemic articles around the turn of the century about, well, we got to fix the turrets, fix the turrets. He actually, in the language of the time, called the turrets the greatest crime ever perpetrated against members of the white race.
Wow,
that's hyperbolic.
It's quite hyperbolic.
He writes this account of, he's at a naval review in Baltimore. He's standing on the forecastle of USS Kearsarge BB5, and he's, you know, at these naval reviews they used to allow civilians to come on and see what your tax dollars are paying for and tour the ship and stuff, right? And he says he's watching this little girl playing with her friends, and she's simply stepping in and out of the gun port, and he's thinking, you know, a 14-inch shell could get all the way to the magazine and touch nothing if it's coming in at a plunging angle, right? Yes, absolutely. Yes, Sims. In 1902, he gets put in charge, as a lieutenant, gets put in charge of all, is it naval gunnery? Damn it, what's he get?
Bureau of Ordnance or something?
Nah, it's something more rubber meets the road than a bureau position. I know he's put in charge of all Navy target practice in 1902, something related to that. I don't know what his title is, but yes, eventually he advances to admiral. Yeah, he's a very interesting naval character from this period. And you know, he was into destroyers. Eventually, he comes to the idea that battleships are entirely obsolete and were long before even the First World War. And there's a destroyer named after him in the Second World War, I think, right? It was sunk in 42, maybe? I don't know. I'll look into that. Let's see.
You mean Sims? You mean Sims?
That is what I meant. Who did I say?
I think you did. I just wanted to verify.
Yeah. Yes, Lego History. Yes,
there's a whole class.
Yes.
Oh, as Lego said it. Yeah, there's a whole Sims class.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, good.
Okay, let's talk about fire control. So, or lack thereof in this period. So, Iowa and Captain Evans is put in charge of the naval expedition to San Juan, Puerto Rico. This is a month and a half or so, something like that, before the Battle of Santiago. So they arrive on station off San Juan. Their orders are to simply bombard the fortress guarding San Juan, Puerto Rico, which is called Morro Castle. You guys, all of the Spanish ports have a castle guarding the entrance, or a fortress guarding the entrance, and they are all called the Morro. Havana's got a Morro, Guantanamo's got a Morro, Santiago's got a Morro, San Juan's got a Morro. And then, on the other side of the world, in the Philippine insurrection, the Moros are a group of irregulars that fight in the insurrection against the United States. So forgive me for getting confused as heck when I was trying to figure out what Morro was. So Morro Castle. So they show up, and they're lying off. This little squadron is lying off San Juan. I don't know why I used a picture of a 4-inch gun to illustrate this. I wasn't thinking. But anyway, Captain Evans simply steps off the bridge, walks over to the gun captain of the nearest 6-pounder, says, "Try 2,500 yards." The guy sets the sights for 2,500 yards, pulls the lanyard. The shell lands at the base of the fortress lighthouse, and then Evans orders 2,500 yards to be communicated to every gun crew on the ship, and that's fire control. So ships in this period, the main battery can really only fire at one target. That's all they're equipped to deal with. The secondary battery, the rapid fire battery, is sort of free to engage targets of opportunity. So torpedo boats or destroyers or small craft that gets close, they can fight them off. But it's also perfectly legitimate to have the secondary battery engage with whatever the main battery is firing at, if it's close enough. Excuse me. Ranges are communicated to each gun crew verbally, either through speaking tubes or through runners. I kept trying to figure out if they had some other system of communicating ranges or change in range based on targets, bearing, and speed, and there's nothing. Admiral Sampson, the commander at Santiago de Cuba, the commander of the North Atlantic Squadron, writes sort of a post-mortem of the battle to explain why the Americans won and why the Spanish lost. And he says, one of these many points, he says it's because the Spaniards were not trained to properly estimate with the naked eye changes to range due to targets, bearing, and speed, which of course means that American crews were, which of course means that that's it. That's all there is, right? So a gun captain receives, information about what we're shooting at. A runner tells him, or a speaking tube tells him how far away it is. And then it's on the gun captain to visually look at the target and decide, is he bearing, is he like this? Is he like that? How fast is he going relative to us? And then I won't even use the word estimate, because estimations are based on data. This is a guesstimation of where the target, like what's going on with the target. Is it pulling away from us? Is it going closer to us? It's all done with his eyeballs. The gun captain on casemate mounted weapons, or the pointer on turret-mounted weapons, because the gun captain actually doesn't see anything, can't see the target inside a turret because he's standing behind the breech. And the trainer, of course. But it's all just the crew just doing it, right? At Santiago de Cuba, accuracy is never going to rise above 2% for the U.S. North Atlantic Squadron. For the Spaniards, it's even worse. Because here Sampson is considering American gunnery to be good, because this is all he has to work with. And this fact blew my mind more than anything. The Navy doesn't institute regulated scientific spotting target practice until 1903. The first regulated Navy target practice happened in April of 1903. Before that, it's incumbent on each captain or each admiral of his squadron or fleet or whatever to just kind of make sure that his crew knows how the guns work, right? It's very decentralized, and it's.
So what you're saying is, just to reinforce that, because that is a pretty astounding stat. Yeah. During the battle in Santiago de Cuba, we were hitting at a 2% accuracy rate.
Yep. Yeah. I
That's
forgot.
astounding.
Yeah. I forgot to copy the stats down, so I don't know what they are. For I did not commit them to memory, but Iowa fires, I don't know, close to 1,000 projectiles in 3 hours, and they hit, I don't know, they make less than 200 hits or something. Nobody, and you can't adjust fire because nobody's spotting the fall of shell, because you can't, right? They're counting the hits, but you can't. They're not adjusting and readjusting based on where the hits are, because the men who are working the guns are in charge of that, and they're looking straight. They're looking straight at the enemy. They're not up here, right? That's why everybody's going to get these cage masts in 10 years, is because they need somebody up here looking down, right? Because you can't. I mean, you can't tell. You can't, if you miss the ship fore or aft, right? You can't tell if this shell landed in the water, ahead, like between you and the ship, or behind you and the ship, and nobody else anywhere. Dreadnought shows up in 1906, but the Navy was headed that direction anyway. If Dreadnought had never been designed, it would have been some other ship right around the same time, because they also have this problem where I can tell the difference between the splash of a 4-inch projectile and the splash of a 12-inch projectile, but I can't tell the difference between a 4-inch and an 8-inch, or an 8-inch and a 12-inch. And so you start, in subsequent years, you're going to see a gulf start widening between the guns, the caliber of the guns, simply to make it easier to tell where these shells are landing. So Dreadnought would have come around for different reasons than Dreadnought was ultimately deliberately designed, sort of naturally.
So do you want to continue on with like the Iowa, the service history of USS Iowa?
Yeah, we'll do that real quick. So this is a picture on Iowa. This is a Marine gun crew. We've got telescopic sights here. This is taken a few years later. And then this is a pretty dramatic picture. This is taken around 1907. It's not in Iowa. It's on a different ship. This is a 7-inch gun. They have right there, that is a range telegraph. So the gunnery officer is communicating ranges to the guns with this analog ticker, right? That flips up numbers or flips down numbers, and tells them the.
I wonder if that's the range clock that the guys are commenting about. So for Eric and Hoist, I wonder, because I'm not familiar.
Oh yeah, they don't have range clocks yet. That's right. Now I think Hoist is talking about like this clock that gets mounted on the foremast or the main mast of the ship, and it's got numbers on the edges. And that's all I can do. I can't explain anymore because I don't get it. But I think that's what he's talking about.
All right.
But I don't know. What else is everybody saying here?
Well, this is a nice
windage. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 8-inch guns, absolutely. So in U.S. naval doctrine, the 8-inch gun was on its way out when Iowa was designed. In fact, what they wanted was Iowa to have a huge complement of rapid-fire 6-inch guns, but American industry could only do as good as producing 4-inch rapid-fire guns. So they included 8-inch guns as a compromise to sort of bridge the gap. So your 4-inch guns fire your 15 rounds a minute. Your 8-inch guns fire your like 1 round every 2 minutes or something. It's way faster than the 12-inch in this period that's firing 1 round every 5 minutes. But because the 8-inch did so well in the Spanish-American War, and 8-inch is the real MVP of the Spanish-American War in both Santiago and on the other side of the world at Manila. 8-inch guns were crazy. In fact, I'm glad that however you pronounce that gentleman's name brought it up, because I saved a paragraph about the destructive power of the 8-inch guns. This is from navweapons.com, and I think it's a really good illustration. During the Battle of Manila Bay in 1898, USS Olympia fired an 8-inch shell from one of her 8-inch 35 guns that struck the Spanish flagship Reina Cristina squarely in the stern and drove through the length of the ship, rending every obstruction, wrecking the aft boiler, and blowing open the deck in its explosion. This one shell proved the flagship's fate. So, and the 8-inch gun is simply putting out a greater volume of fire, and so it's just worth far more. So it went from, it's like its twilight years in the 1890s to becoming so popular that they start putting it on all these ships, right? And the 8-inch stays a cruiser gun forever. Yeah, 8-inch guns with 2% accuracy, right? But if you're firing more rounds, that 2% represents more hits.
Yes, it does.
Let's see here now. What do we got? Oh, yeah, service history. That's next. Thank you, Shane, for keeping me on task.
No, we're good. We're good.
So here's Iowa's. This is a very famous photo. This is used a lot when people are demonstrating Iowa. I will say, Shane, bold choice to use as the video's thumbnail. Iowa in her 1917 configuration.
Bold. Sorry about that.
No, it's all right. It's all right. It needs talked about as well. So this is her at her trials. The Cramp house flag flies from the foremast there.
Nice.
And if you look at the deck, I love this. Cramp loaded her down with workers because they got a bonus for every half knot they achieved over 16 knots. They got a monetary bonus. So she managed 17.8. In actual service, she's rarely going to get above 16 and a half. But they put all of these workers on her to make sure, and they were rotating dudes in and out and in and out, so people wouldn't get tired, so the stokers could work, right? And they got that 17.8
Nice.
knots. It's something like they got like a $250,000 bonus in unadjusted dollars or something
Oh.
for that 17.8 knots. So this is her original configuration. You can always spot Iowa in her original configuration, that is before the Spanish-American War, by looking at the aftermost 12-inch turret right here and seeing how far down the ochre paint goes. If it goes all the way down to the main deck, that's before 1898. She spent most of her time before the Spanish-American War, which is not long, less than a year actually. Let's see, on the East Coast, and then running more drills in the Gulf of Mexico. Here she is in her Spanish-American War coat of lead gray paint. And it was apparently the exact color of lead, sort of an ugly color. But by all accounts, it worked really, really well in the war, and everybody was really happy with it.
Okay, so what am I seeing at between the foremast and the first funnel there? That looks like it's hard to see. It's right to the left of your mouse. Like, so if you see your mouse, now just move it to the left, to the left.
Oh, okay, here's my mouse. Where do I go?
Yep, just right underneath that. You see this large, looks like a cage right there. And then go off to your left. You know, there you go, like that.
Okay, so they've stretched a canvas awning over the
gotcha. Okay.
bridge deck that I don't know what it's called. If this were a British ship, I think it would be called the compass platform. I don't know what they called this particular deck right here.
It's observation deck or something, right? Like lookout signalmen maybe. Okay, so there's an awning there that's canvas over it. Okay.
Yeah, all over and they've also got awnings stretched over the quarterdeck as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So right, I'm not going to spend that much time on the Spanish-American War because I don't think we have that kind of time. Here is the Battle of Santiago de Cuba. A couple of things to note. The American squadron is blockading Santiago Bay, Harbor, whatever I call it, when the Spanish fleet comes out. Oh my gosh, how do I explain this quickly? So poor Admiral Cervera is forced by the Spanish government to take his squadron from Spain to the Caribbean. He doesn't want to do it because it's a suicide mission. He bounces around a few ports looking for coal, trying to figure out what to do. He eventually settles on going up to Santiago, entering the bay, and just sitting there. He sits there for a month because he's sort of like, how do I do this? He cares about his men. He's actually a really good commander. And he becomes one of the American heroes of the Spanish-American War. The Americans sort of adopt him after the battle as this sort of honorable figure that everybody really likes, right? Let's see here.
Here's something.
Oh yeah, he's right. Yep. That's exactly where that picture's from. Anyway, long story short, Sampson and the North Atlantic Squadron, joined by Schley and the Flying Squadron. Also, apparently Schley is pronounced Sly, so I guess I should be saying Commodore Sly, according to one of the books I have, but
Okay.
that's very difficult to remember to do because it's Schley. I don't know. Anyway, they have Cervera in this bay. He is eventually forced to make a breakout by the governor of Santiago, who has apparently authority over him. He picks the perfect moment and gets the drop on the American blockade. Massachusetts has gone away to Guantanamo to coal. Admiral Sampson and his flagship, the New York, has gone to Siboney to go speak with General Shafter as he makes his way across the island, right? So the Americans are down 2 ships, actually 3 ships, because or 4. Who's with Sampson when he leaves? We have the converted yacht, the auxiliary cruiser Gloucester, the torpedo boat Erickson, no relation, and New York. They've all left. They're gone. So Cervera surprises everybody and makes his dash for the ocean, right? He tries to escape westward along the southern coast of Cuba. Um, Everybody claims to be the first one to see Cervera come out, right? But it is established that Iowa shoots the first shot of the battle. Just a shot from a 6-pounder, really just a signal, not actually aimed at. Well, I'm sure it's aimed at somebody, but what are you going to do? It's a 6-pounder, and nobody knows the range yet. So all of the ships in the blockade basically start with their bows pointed at the opening of the bay, as they have been for the previous month. So as the Spanish fleet passes in front of everybody, they've all got to make a turn to port to chase the fleet. Schley, who's kind of second in command, there's going to be a controversy about this later, performs in his ship Brooklyn, what is infamously known as the loop, and you can see it on that map there. Instead of putting his helm to it's tiller commands in this era, so instead of putting the helm to starboard, turning the ship to port, he turns to starboard. He makes this huge loop, which, imagine all the ships are moving simultaneously, looks to everybody else like he's trying to get in back behind the rest of the ships, and it causes this huge, is that a cowardice move, like controversy that explodes in the newspapers, and it's this whole thing. Anyway, Iowa trades shots with each Spanish ship as they pass in front of her, and then attempts to maneuver in to fight each one. The trouble is, remember that 17.8 knot top speed that Iowa achieves at her trials? She can't do it. She has 2 boilers lit, just 2. The other 3 have gone cold because she's on blockade duty. You're not going to burn all the boilers you're not going to burn. You're going to keep all the fires lit. The only ship that's got all the fires lit is Oregon, and so she gets out in front of everybody else. Schley's loop causes everybody else to accordion, and then the ships almost all crash into each other. Like every other pre-dreadnaught fight, everybody tries to ram each other and then misses because, of course, right? It's very difficult. I forgot to mention Iowa has a reinforced ram bow, because in this period, everybody thinks the first thing everybody's going to do is ram, and it never happens. It doesn't happen here. It doesn't happen at Tsushima Strait, even though everybody tries. Everybody just keeps missing each other. Iowa, Evans maneuvers Iowa, so she's like firing the starboard battery at some Spanish ships and then kind of turning her so the port battery can get it. It's very difficult because it's still a running battle. Ultimately, she engages Cologne. Cologne, with a single volley, puts 2 projectiles through Iowa, which is the best shooting the Spaniards do all day. And Evans says it's 2 of the finest shots he's ever seen. And Cologne is the Spaniards' best ship. Only problem is she hasn't had her main guns installed yet. They just purchased her, so she's got these 2 10-inch turrets that don't have any guns in them. They've put like tree trunks in there to look like guns, but she's firing with her secondaries. She's the ship that puts around a Honporia round through Iowa's cofferdam, and then puts another round through the starboard side. I forget where. Wrecks the medical dispensary, and Evans says that the rest of the battle smelled like medicine on the bridge because all these fumes wafted up. I actually have a Hontori around here. So Iowa was penetrated by something very similar to this. This is a 120 millimeter Hontori round.
Hold on.
This was, oh, it's going to be backwards, isn't it? But this was pulled out of the gun breach, one of the gun breaches of Reina Cristina, the Spanish flagship at Manila Bay. Somebody went to her wreck and pulled this out of one of the breaches of her gun. But anyway, around almost exactly like this.
And how did that end up in your collection?
So that was getting deaccessioned by the National Mississippi River and Museum, National Mississippi River Museum and Aquarium in Dubuque. It was on a deaccession list of theirs. So museums trade out. You know this, yeah. So they asked us if we wanted it, and we did. We do not know. Yeah, it's inert. Hoist, it's inert. Look, ain't nothing in there. Wait, where's my camera? There. Nothing in there. Not sure if Iowa was hit by one of Cologne's 120 millimeters or one of Cologne's 6-inchers. I don't know. I hope it's 120 millimeters so I can put that in the exhibit. Anyway, Iowa has to duck out eventually because she can't make the speed. Oregon and New York eventually chase down Cologne, and she surrenders after Oregon brackets her with a couple of 13-inch rounds. They're the last Spanish ship still fighting, so they're like, all right, whatever, it's over, right? So Iowa immediately goes to rescue survivors, accepts the surrender of Captain Urlate of the Vizcaya in a crazy event that was witnessed by everybody on Iowa's quarterdeck when Urlate came aboard. He surrenders to Captain Evans, turns around, takes off his hat, says, "Adios, Vizcaya!" and Vizcaya explodes. At that exact moment, she detonates, as if on cue.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then eventually, Evans aboard Iowa accepts the surrender of Admiral Cervera, who had been conveyed to Iowa with the auxiliary cruiser Gloucester. And then, so Evans and the other captains become the heroes of the battle. There's a very ugly fight after the battle between Shay and Sampson about who gets credit. Not really, I don't know. Most of the Navy sided with Sampson. Some of the newspapers sided with Shay. It was this ugly thing. So then that leaves like a vacuum in terms of who's the hero, right? And so the heroes are Evans, Phillips, the other captains, Lieutenant Commander Wainwright of the Gloucester. The Gloucester story is crazy. Gloucester is this converted pleasure yacht, and he positions Gloucester between the two Spanish destroyers, Pluton and Fuhrer, as they make their dash out of the harbor, and he just guns them down. It's crazy. So Iowa and Indiana and Texas, I think, are also shooting at these two destroyers. But Gloucester runs right up to them, forces one ashore, and it explodes and causes the other one to haul down its flag. It's incredible. All of the captains at Santiago are advanced 5 numbers as sort of a reward for the battle. Shay and Sampson are both advanced 6 numbers. Lieutenant Commander Wainwright of Gloucester is advanced 10 numbers.
Now, when you say numbers,
yes, sir.
Yeah, what are you meaning by when they get advanced 10 numbers?
So that is, all right, I'm going to do my best, okay? So, like, that's how you get promoted in the Navy, right? There are only so many spaces for promotion available. People have to retire. So you
Right.
get, like, numbers are, you know what? The Navy might work like this now, and I just don't know. I have no idea. But it's just how you get promoted, right? You get moved up. It's like a big list. That's the best I can do. I hope someone
Okay.
knows how
Yeah. So they have a certain number of rank per year, right?
Yeah.
And so, okay, so that maybe that's what you're saying is they get moved to the front of the line, so to speak,
That's
for
what I
whatever
think it is.
ranking.
I don't really know. Okay,
Here's
so
here's the BJ Turin really contributing here. Gloucester was J.P. Morgan's. Yeah. Wow.
cool. Yeah. So BJ Turin, you know pretty well about this. Send me an email. We'll chat about this sometime. Always looking for more information.
And we'll give your email. You'll give your email again at the
Absolutely.
at the conclusion.
So here's some photos of damage done to Iowa. I have not been able to figure out where this is. I need to go back to NHHC and see if they've got it written down somewhere, because I didn't check, because I had a water leak this morning in my storerooms and I ran out of time before the presentation started.
Yes.
But this clearly is the shell that wrecked the medical dispensary. And these shots of damage are some of the only interior shots, in good, well-lit interior shots we have of Iowa. So I don't exactly know where this is, except to say that it's in the superstructure and somewhere below the bridge.
Well, that looks like on the left. It looks like it's around a barbette.
Doesn't
right?
it?
Like, yeah. Interesting.
I don't know how to explain that, because that's not where the dispensary was, right? Because maybe it's further back than I thought Evans was talking about, and it's next to one of the 8-inch barbettes, huh? I bet you that's what it is. You're probably right. That's what it is.
Okay.
This is one of 2 photographs taken on the deck of Iowa during the battle, presumably during the latter stages when most of the shooting was done, right? Because these guys are all standing around on the deck with the Spanish fleet burning in the background. You can see Cuba in the background. All these ships run ashore and explode. So that's probably Almirante Oquendo or Vizcaya on the left. I don't know. I haven't found a good explanation of who's who in this photograph. Here's that naval review, the victory parade that BT Turin was talking about. There she is.
Great. And you can see the canvas much more on the fantail there.
Yep.
You know, on the back of the ship.
Yeah. So here she is in 1903. So we're going to go through really quickly her service history and then her updates and stuff, if I can wrap my brain around it, because it's confusing in these early years. Suffice it to say that Iowa was very busy between 1898 and 1914, serving in both the Atlantic and the Pacific. In fact, she served as flagship of the South Atlantic Squadron for 2 years. She crossed the Atlantic several times and served in the Mediterranean. At Annapolis in 1906, she participated in ceremonies commemorating the return of John Paul Jones' remains to the U.S. from France. In 1907, participated in the, I wrote Jonestown exhibition, that's wrong, the Jamestown exhibition, celebrating the 300th anniversary of the Jamestown colony. Sometime in 1903, definitely after this picture was taken, she gets her 2 afterbridge 4-inch 40s removed, so now she has 4 remaining. Sorry, 4. And you can't even see my camera. I was making.
Sorry. Okay, we'll do it. Yep, put it right back.
It doesn't matter at all. I was just making numbers with my hands, and I did this when I said 4. I don't know. And then she got those 4-inch 40s replaced with 2 more 6-pounders mounted on her afterbridge for a total now of 22 6-pounders. And in 1905, had 2 of her torpedo tubes removed. Where are we now? Oh, hey.
I'll blow back up. I'll blow back up there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, let's talk about the crew real quick here. So in 1900, the Navy was majority foreign born, right? So sailors from, as hold on, let's see. John D. Alden says 100 nations, which is a hell of a way to say 50. I like it a lot. they skewed elderly because the Navy did not have any retirement policy for enlisted men. So if you had been in the Navy all your life, you tried not to leave. In fact, before Manila Bay, Commodore Dewey sees an old timer, an old blue jacket, leaning on the rail and smoking a pipe, goes up to talk to him, ask him what he's thinking about. And he says the last time he was in combat was Chancellorsville as a Confederate infantryman. And there's we could do a whole podcast on like personnel stuff. It's really interesting in this period. The Navy uses you until you're no longer useful, and then they dump you on the street. There was no, even after the Army and the Marines allowed enlisted men to draw retirement pensions, the Navy still was years behind. And a sailor actually had to sue the Navy to get a pension, and that's the story of that. I wish I knew more details, but it's a fantastic story. So there's peeling taters. Actually, the dudes peeling taters are the same dudes peeling taters in the back of this photo. So I think they were just moving them around when the photographer was in there. Unless this is like the other part of the galley, but it doesn't. I don't know where they are on the ship, frankly, in this photo.
Yeah, the galley might be to the left of the doorway, and then they just they just rotated them, maybe.
Yeah. So I do believe that this photo must have been taken after the establishment of the general mess in 1902, which is another thing, right? Before 1902, sailors did not get a standard ration prepared by cooks in a galley. They had what was called a berth deck slusher, which was a man, just an enlisted guy who was chosen for every couple of dozen or men got their own slusher. A quarter of the pay, actually, let me check that. I know I took a note somewhere about that.
Yeah, that's a very interesting story.
It's a very interesting system. So 1/4 of each enlisted man's pay was given in cash to the slusher. And then it was on him when the ship was in port to go buy produce, meat, whatever, for his 24 dudes, and then they'd live off whatever the slusher could buy when they were in port. Slusher is a slang term. I don't know what it means. If it's offensive, I'm very sorry. I have no idea. So then he would cook for his 24 guys. If he was waylaid by a guy selling whiskey or a sex worker while he was in port and spent the men's money, they lived on the hardtack and coffee ration until the next port. No negotiations. That was it. It's just wild. So the general mess is instituted in 1902, and you can sometimes kind of soft date photographs of Iowa as before 1902-ish, right? Because I'm sure there was a lag, and before that, by the presence of the Charlie Noble stacks, which are two thin smokestacks between her main stacks that indicate the position of the galley where it is in the ship, right? And those show up around 1905. All right. So this is still 1903 because she's got her 4 inchers on the after bridge right there. Here she's in dry dock. I'm so sorry. I'm going to breeze through these photos here. That's just a great photo. I don't really have anything to say about it. It's just good, right? Oh, and remember, so she's returned to her peacetime white and ochre paint. And you can tell that it's after Spanish-American War because the ochre paint continues in a line like this all the way across the aftermost 12-inch turret right here. Whereas before 1898, the entire turret was ochre. The more you know. All right. Okay, here we have, this is 1906. So radio's been installed. And all 4 torpedo tubes are now gone. But they keep the hatches for ventilation purposes. And you can see her foremast is super long for radio antenna now. Look at the aft, stern. Even though this is a bad photo, I included it because she's got her torpedo hatches open for ventilation even though there are no tubes. Also, that's the ship's laundry drying there.
Yeah.
Then, brace yourselves. Okay, so that's her. There she is in 1910. So, in 1908, the after bridge was removed, and the installation of the cage mast with the spotting top was mounted. So, as soon as Hoist is saying something about the berth deck slusher. Hold on.
Oh, yeah, I'll bring it up for everyone.
The slusher is supervised by a Navy cook. Interesting. Thank you, Hoist. I didn't know that part, and that's important. I had a lot of questions about the slusher system. Interesting there, Joe. This is good. This is why I wanted to do this live, so that people could film it.
Yeah.
Again, not a naval historian. Just trying to put an exhibit together here.
And we'll get back to that exhibit.
Yeah. Yes. All right. So she's painted haze gray in 1908. The chart house is removed. The bridge is opened. That second bridge level is also removed. In 1910, they add 6 4-inch 40s. And look closely, they've added one to the top of each turret. The 12 inchers. Because now they're thinking about like submarines and stuff, right? Another interesting thing to note, and pay attention going forward in the next few photographs. So there are these armored cupolas on top of each turret. The cupola in the center is for the trainer who controls the whole turret. The cupolas on the sides are for the pointers that control the gun tubes, right? The 8-inch turrets did not have trainers' cupolas before the 4-inch guns were added, obviously, because you got to protect the trainer from the blast of the guns. So notice now there's 3 cupolas on top of each 8-inch turret, where before there was only 2. My question is, what were the trainers doing before the cupolas were added? I don't understand where they were. Were they sticking their heads out of the turret? That doesn't make any sense because the pointers have cupolas, right? So they need to be protected. I don't understand how those turrets were trained before this, before it became glaringly obvious to me where the trainers were, because there's a cupola now. So I don't know.
And you said the trainers were with each gun earlier in the conversation.
Yes, sir. There's 1 trainer per turret.
Yeah.
There's no other way. Actually, I'm sorry. There's 2 trainers per turret because there's a trainer and a trainer's assistant. The trainer sits at a stool that's way up high with his head out the cupola. The assistant sits directly beneath him in a stool and has his head kind of between the trainer's legs facing forward. And I do not know what he does. I don't know what the assistant does. If you know, email me. All right. There she is again in her 1910 configuration, showing that real interesting arrangement of the guns on top of the turrets. She was decommissioned and laid up for what was supposed to be the final time in 1914. And in 1917, however, war were declared. So she was brought back into service and given new life. She was spent as a few months as a receiving ship, and then spent the majority of the war as a guard ship in the Chesapeake, looking for U-boats. Notice in her 1917 configuration, they've removed the 4-inch guns and replaced at least the forward one on top of the 12-inch turret with a rangefinder. Finally. There's still the 4 4-inch guns on the main deck. So you can see one here and there, one there. All of the 6-pounders are removed, but they've added 8 1-pounders, which brings the current total to 10. Because again, they're looking for rapid-fire guns to fight the U-boats with, because it would be madness to put depth charge racks on Iowa.
And I like how they've enclosed the cage antenna there now with like a little house, a deck.
Yeah, it's like a canvas weather screen that they've stretched over the whole thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's really interesting because in prior pictures it looks like it was just open, like a crow's nest, with just a shield, and now
Yeah.
it looks like it's an enclosed little house there. Interesting.
All right. So now we've arrived at World War I, so we need to get back to the exhibit, as you said. So this is a fantastic photo album that we found digitized in the archives of Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. There was a band member who lived in Virginia who was aboard Iowa at the exact same time as our man, Seaman First Class William Stommel. And with his Brownie camera, he took all of these pictures. So we've got permission to reproduce these photographs, and this is just a small selection of them for the exhibit. Undoubtedly, our guy, William Stommel, is in these photos. We have not found him yet. We also sent the photos to the family to try and identify him. They haven't found him yet either. Anyway, here's the general mess. They said that folks in the Navy in this period were the only folks in the world who ate underneath the place where they slept, and slept underneath the place where they ate, because when everybody pulls their hammocks out to go to sleep, the tables get folded up, they get stowed in the overhead, and then the next day the tables get brought down, and you eat underneath the place where your hammocks are hooked in the overhead.
Now, is that like a pulley system? Would they hoist it up to the overhead, or they would just fold and it would get stowed?
Good question. I think they're just, there might be pulleys. I haven't seen any. In other pictures, it looks like they're just lashed to the overhead.
Okay.
I don't know how they got them up there. Oh, we can tell this is the main deck, because if you look over to the right, you can see a gun position, either a 4-incher or you can see the hammock hooks. So the hammock hooks are on the what do you call them? Rafters.
The frames.
Frames. Jesus, thank you. And they're numbered hooks, so each man gets a number. You hang the hammocks up there. Over on the right side, where all that light is coming in, is one of the gun casemates. There are usually platforms that flip up underneath them that you stand on, right? So right now the platforms are flipped down, and we got all this space over here now. So just like in Nelson's day, 300 years previous, not to suggest that Nelson was 300 years before this, but I'm saying in all of naval tradition, the men live among their guns. It's so interesting. So again, this is the whole crew, probably 1918 or so. Stommel's in here somewhere. Haven't found him yet. Band going for a swim. They're in one of the boats. You can see Iowa in the distance there, all foggy. Bunch of guys diving off one of the coal whips. And you can see a guy on the right. This guy here is wearing a full body swimsuit, just like the swimsuit that was donated to us. Not suggesting that that's Stommel, but I don't know.
I was going to say that. Oh, that must be him. That must be Stommel.
Yeah, why not? Some sort of kid mascot on a 12-inch gun. Surely he's not a midshipman. He looks super young, like 8, right? Like he's just some kid that they're like, put this cap on. And
right.
Iowa in dry dock. Unfortunately, this guy was taking all his pictures with his cell phone like this instead of like this, so they're tall. Screws in dry dock. A fight on the forecastle. This is either a friendly engagement or in this period, fights were still organized by the chiefs to settle arguments, settle differences between the men. Coaling, the worst job in the Navy. So 100 years ago, if you wanted to disappear, you could. All you had to do was go to a different place and change your name, right? So annually, around 1900, and I realize I'm going 17 years back from when this photo was taken, but that's all I have stats for. Around 1900, the annual desertion rate for the Navy was 14%. For the Marines, it was 12%. So 14% of the total force walked away from the Navy forever every year on average. And the height of desertion happened at coaling time because it was just the worst job in the world. Captains would rarely coal like at a dock because it was just all the easier for men to simply walk away and be gone forever, right? So usually you bring barges out to the ships and you coal, a mile offshore, whatever. It gets the whole ship filthy. These big bags of coal just get dumped on the deck, and you shovel them into manholes that lead to chutes that go down to the coal bunkers. Just awful. And once it starts, it doesn't stop till all the coal's loaded. Night and day.
Yeah, you see the coal in the back there, right?
Yep.
Maybe
That's a barge.
anthracite coal. Yeah, that's a barge.
Yep. Here's a coal whip. Yeah. These guys they're always coaling in their whites. I don't know. Probably because it's hot. This is my favorite photo out of the bunch. So he is standing on the spotting platform at the top of the cage mast, taking a picture past his boots straight down. And so what we're seeing here are the starboard 8-inch turrets. So the bow is off to our right. You can see the 3 armored cupolas real well. You can see the band playing on top of the left-hand turret there.
Mm-hmm.
Anything, games, chants, music, anything to keep the men entertained while they were doing this awful, awful task. Then, of course, when the coaling's done, you got to clean it. Cleaning, coaling, cleaning, and coaling was the rhythm of the new Navy. And I just copied that sentence straight from John Alden's book. I did not invent it.
I was going to say, it's quite poetic.
Right?
Quite poetic.
And then the last photo I'll show you in this group is the 12-inch gun discharging. He's lying prone on the quarterdeck, taking a picture of this gun firing. So that's how you know the guns are not firing in the pictures from the Battle of Santiago, where everybody's just standing around on the deck, right? This is what it's like. Blast from the 12-inch turrets interfered like crazy with the guns mounted in the superstructure, on the superstructure deck. Evans recorded that folks would get blown away from their gun positions every time one of these guns discharged at Santiago. And eventually, during the course of the battle, which for Iowa was about an hour and a half long, they just started evacuating the superstructure every time one of the 12-inch guns were ready to fire. And then they would have everybody go back and man their 6-pounders again while the 12-incher was loading.
Wow.
All right, this is interesting. So this is a photo from the National Archives, and I've kept the photo card. I didn't crop it out because I want you to see this. This is Iowa's last hurrah. So this is the victory review at Baltimore, where Iowa was made the flagship. This says flagship of the Atlantic Fleet. I don't know about that, or maybe I don't know enough. That seems heady for a single naval review. But there's I think that's a minesweeper behind her. There's clearly an Indiana class behind that. There's an actual seaplane caught in frame up near the top. Crazy picture, right? Yeah. But Iowa leads the review at Baltimore. This is in December of 1918. There's that subchaser again. I love this photo. 2 Spanish-American War veterans, Iowa on the right there, and on the left, Mayflower. At this time, the presidential yacht, but in 1898, an auxiliary cruiser. And Iowa is flying an admiral's flag from her foremast in this picture. It's hard to see, so I'll go to the next picture. I think this is the last photo of Iowa. This was made in early 1919. This is the last photo of Iowa, I believe, before she's converted to a target drone. There's the flag of a rear admiral from the mainmast right there. I don't know what the story is with that. There she is. This is 1921. Her armament and all amenities have been removed. She's been converted to burn oil. The helm, the throttle, the engines, everything is linked with a complex radio system, and she can be controlled entirely remotely. She is the Navy's first radio-controlled drone. In 1921, she was off the East Coast used as an aerial target for the U.S. Army Air Service, the U.S. Army Air Corps, I think, right now. It's changing its name to Air Corps right about now. Yeah, it's it gets sad now.
So are they down? Could that be in Pensacola or off Florida or?
Easily, yeah. In fact, I do believe that's where it is. I don't know for sure though.
Okay. Oh,
fantastic aerial shots.
What a photograph that is.
Right?
Wow.
She's transited the Panama Canal in February of 1923. And then off Panama that same year in March, she's a moving target for the dreadnought Mississippi, BB4-1. There she is taking she's hit with a 14-inch projectile right there, right at the base of the mainmast. There she is afterwards. Forward funnel collapsed, mainmast is teetering. And she sinks on the 23rd of March, 1923. Full military honors. There's a band playing while she sinks. And she is stricken from the naval list 2 days later. She was sold for scrap, but I don't think anybody moved on that. And as far as I know, her wreck remains unvisited. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. So, prominent crew members of USS Iowa. I'll do this fast. Spruance was a midshipman on Iowa 1905, 1906. Then there were a few Medal of Honor incidents on Iowa. So, first we have July the 20th, 1898. A boiler exploded. This is a couple of weeks after the Battle of Santiago de Cuba. The Medal of Honor citation for coppersmith Philip B. Kiefer reads, on board the USS Iowa off Santiago de Cuba, 20 July 1898, following the blowout of a manhole gasket of that vessel, which caused the fire room to be filled with live steam and the floor plates to be covered with boiling water, Kiefer showed courageous and zealous conduct in hauling fires from 2 furnaces of Boiler B. Same citation for Fireman First Class Robert Penn, here pictured. Oh, and that Medal of Honor action is depicted on the right there. On board the USS Iowa off Santiago de Cuba, 20 July 1898, performing his duty at the risk of serious scalding at the time of the blowing out of the manhole gasket on board the vessel. Penn hauled the fire while standing on a board thrown across a coal bucket 1 foot above the boiling water, which was still blowing from the boiler.
Wow.
Robert Penn, believe it or not, 1898, is the last African-American enlisted sailor to have received the Medal of Honor during his own lifetime.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that incredible? Some have received it posthumously.
Yes. Certainly.
But he is the last African-American sailor to have received it while he was still alive.
Wow.
And he received it during the Spanish-American War. Right then, there was no dithering. So, that was not the case for the First and Second World Wars. And then I'll run through this more quickly. On January 25th, 1905, there was another boiler explosion for which Fireman First Class Frederick Benny, Seaman First Class Heinrich Benke, Water Tender Patrick Bresnahan, Fireman First Class Dmitry Korahorky, Boilermaker Edward Floyd, and Chief Water Tender Johannes G. Johansson were earned the Medal of Honor.
And that shows you the international flavor of the sailors at the. Yep. Sorry, I beat you to it then.
No, that's fine. That's fine. You're trying to move this along, and I get it. This is Captain, later Rear Admiral Robley Douglas and Evans fighting Bob. Everybody listen up. I want to talk about his life, but we must conclude this video. So I'm just going to show you guys. This is his memoir, A Sailor's Log. All right, text is, oh no, it's not backwards. Nice. Recollections of 40 years of naval life. Read this. He's a very good writer. I don't believe this is ghost written. This is just crazy. This is crazy good. He was born in 1846, the year Iowa became a state. Goes on to command USS Iowa, right? He's born to a slave-holding family in Virginia, goes to Annapolis, winds up fighting for the Union, and then has this fantastic career at sea all the way through the Spanish-American War. This fellow cared about his men, was a very good commander, very aggressive commander, but very compassionate, and had a very, very strong sense of fairness as well. He's not a perfect man. He's a man of his time, right? I will say that. But I mean, that's just all there is, right? What else is there to say? Truly. He was called Fighting Bob before the Spanish-American War because of how he handled an international crisis in Chile a few years before the Spanish-American War. He had to establish his residence in Utah in the late 1850s before he was allowed to go to Annapolis because he got written a recommendation by a territorial senator. So he had to take a wagon train out to Utah. He wound up getting shot through both legs with arrows in a couple of Native American ambushes. He got his left foot nailed to his mule by an arrow, right? And then he had to be held down and the mule held down. It was this whole thing. He was at the Battle of Fort Fisher, the last great naval engagement of the Civil War, where he got shot in the left shin, then shot. He led a frontal assault on the fortress. He led a formation of blue jackets, a group of blue jackets in this frontal assault on Fort Fisher, this Confederate-held fortress. He got shot in the left shin, the right knee, and while he's sitting on the beach, dressing his wound in his right knee, he gets shot. He gets the toes shot off his right foot. He spends all night on the beach. It's just awful. So he's gimped in both legs. He gets discharged from the Navy, fights the discharge, gets his legs healed, pulls his revolver on any doctor who suggests that looks like maybe he's going to cut his legs off. It's a crazy story. And then after his legs heal, they're all wonky, so he pays a doctor to re-break his legs and then reset them so that they're straight, right? And then just has this crazy long career that doesn't stop. Ultimately, as a rear admiral, he commands the Great White Fleet on its first leg around the bottom of South America, up the west coast of the United States, is forced to go ashore for illness, so he only commands the first portion of the Great White Fleet and then dies. Then he writes 2 memoirs, A Sailor's Log, which carries us through the end of the Spanish-American War, and then an Admiral's Log, which carries us through whenever he published that, I think 1910. So go look this guy up. Okay, right, Iowa influences. This is BB7, USS Illinois, right? Illinois is a redesign of Iowa, an updating of the type. In fact, probably when I navigated to this, you were like, why is he showing me another picture of Iowa for a second before you noticed that she has 2 military masts and her funnels side by side instead of in line with the keel, right? This one, the next one is Connecticut, BB-18. Also, they just start with Iowa and modernize the design, just as Iowa started with Indiana and was a modernization of that design. I know this picture doesn't show it real well, but this is one of the most famous pictures ever taken of the New Steel Navy. The photographer's boat got swamped as Connecticut.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And he saved the plate. He saved the photo. There's no zoom in this period. You can't zoom in with a camera. So he's taking the picture right here. Lastly, this is not an engraving. This is not a wood cutting. This is not a sketch. This is an acid-etched window pane from a front door that was removed from a house about 20 miles from where I am right now. The house was built around 1900. The Navy, the family that lived there had no naval connection whatsoever. Iowans were proud of their ship, and that is our local significance. And I intend with this exhibit to facilitate further pride.
Fabulous. Yeah, so tell us more about, just tell us more a little bit about the exhibit and how people can contribute and give you some help. That would be I can't thank you enough. Your research that you've been doing is is second to none here. It's wonderful that you've had the time to do this, building up to this exhibit, and your passion is obviously coming through in spades as well. So we want you to succeed. I want you to succeed in this exhibit. And so, yeah, give the overview, a wrap up, and then again, how we can contribute and help you.
Well, we've had plenty of time to research this because we've had a change in administration, so focus cannot be on the exhibit right now, as well as Des Moines trying to take our funding away, which will happen or not in July. We'll see how that goes.
Oh boy.
So emphasis at the museum is the focus is elsewhere in the museum right now. So this exhibit just gets to kind of simmer, and when I'm at home, I get to read my books. If you want to contribute to the exhibit, please go to that URL right there, www.groutmuseumdistrict.org. It'll take you to the front page. There will be the banner, the main banner is going to have a link to the page where you can donate. What we need funds for right now is further conservation of artifacts, acquisition of a few pieces of opportunity if they come around. And then number one, we need to raise funds for cases. Just
display cases. Sure.
Yeah, display cases and vitrines.
Those are not cheap.
And lighting. That's where most of the costs are going to come.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
I'm very, very sorry that I cannot give you like an estimate of how much we need, right? Because we're just not in that position right now. As you can tell, this is very, very early in the planning. We don't have like a floor plan for the exhibit yet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have an opening date, mostly because things are in flux at the museum right now. We're searching for a new director right now, so I just don't know. Sort of like, I do know what the future holds. What the future holds is this exhibit. I just don't know when. Right.
Right. And so this gives for our viewers, this gives a little insight into when you're building an exhibit and the amount of work, the amount of attention to what artifacts do we have? What primary sources do we have? And then you're combining all of that. So when a visitor comes to a museum, they're seeing the very last stage of a year, 2 years worth of work. And Nick has expressed that in great detail and very concisely with the amount of work that goes in when you're building an exhibit of this magnitude. You can always do a small exhibit, set up a small display case somewhere relatively quickly. But if you're building out, you have to tap every resource, every primary source to tell the stories of the ship and the crew and family connections, in this case, for people from Iowa. So you're seeing the behind the scenes work that Nick and millions and hundreds of thousands of other museum professionals do to bring you and myself, these exhibits. It's a really fascinating look.
Yeah, and just for this exhibit alone, at this early stage, there must be a dozen people involved, not just myself, but the exhibit staff and
Yes.
And volunteers. In particular, I would like to thank Lego History Sam, who's been volunteers of ours for a long time and has supported me in the research and texts me things, this or that about the Iowa, and he has been a huge help this entire time, and he's built an Iowa out of Legos. I would love to temporarily exhibit here someday, probably concurrent with the opening of the exhibit.
Yeah. And also for those of you that are watching on the Buffalo Naval Park channel, in the description, I do have a link as well, in addition to the donation, the direct link. And
thank you.
So you can see that as well in case someone doesn't catch the slide or something. So yeah, bravo Lego. There you go. Isn't that nice?
So I wanted to talk about all the sources, but we surely don't have time. Here are the primary sources. If you would like to read the whole list, pause the video. Here are some secondary sources I used. Likewise, here's the other half of my list.
Ah, yes, I see.
Shane, I think you mentioned that here. Well, we'll hover on the primary source list so people can see that real quick. Read all of this stuff. It's so good, especially where is it? William Good and Others with Samson Through the War. That's a great book. It's written by a war correspondent, but the captains and the admirals have contributed chapters. And it's so good. And everybody in this period is such a good writer. It's unbelievable. Shane, you said you got the title for this video from a newspaper article that you found, like in the Buffalo, whatever newspaper?
It was actually a Honolulu paper.
Oh, damn. Okay. Then you've done wider research than I have. Do you have that paper in digital form? Can you send it to me?
I could, I will look for it. I think it was part of an internet archive.
Okay, good.
But I'll research it again and send it to you soon.
Good. Thank you so
At
much.
least if I, you know.
And everybody out there, if you have sources or stuff, like send me comments, pictures, book titles, anything. I'm ready. I'm in this now. I'm into it. This is my new favorite subject. So, yes, please. What else do we got? Yeah.
Nice. Any other final questions for us? And Frank says, have you seen Shane's work in Buffalo? So I just responded that, Nick, you and your family came to Buffalo for a few days this past summer, and we worked together and walked through the ships. And being around Nick and his passion is energizing to myself as well. So, and if you're ever in Waterloo, Iowa, please get to the Sullivan Brothers Iowa Veterans Museum and ring that little bell and say, I'm looking for Nick.
Yes, thank you, Shane. My family and I took our vacation this last year in Buffalo. We spent 3 whole days there, and Shane stayed with us every day. They couldn't have a better director of collections than Shane. Thank you, sir.
Oh, you're very welcome. We're happy to do it. I'm so glad we've made this partnership and that we can bring you this video. Go Niners. Okay, Joe Greco, you're always go Niners. You're in San Francisco. Love to see that. I will agree with that. We're kind of around Buffalo. We're kind of sick of Kansas City. So it transfers right from Brady and the Patriots kicking our butt to now Mahomes and Kansas City all the time. So thank you. And again, please leave comments for us. Visit their YouTube channel. Leave comments on this video that Nick can see directly and the media staff there. And thank you very much. Nick, any final thoughts?
I don't think so. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Yeah, thank you very much. Oh boy, everyone's a Chiefs fan here. Okay, All right. Bye, everyone. We'll see you again for us on our end. We'll see you again tomorrow. I cannot even remember what video is premiering tomorrow. Maybe batteries, the battery compartment on Croker. But we'll see you again tomorrow. And thank you very much. This has been a great presentation. And all right, take care, everyone.